Hey everybody, so I'm glad to be back. I took a little break just to spend time with my family, try to get caught up on things. Of course, we never feel caught up on things, but it was really good for just taking a little break from YouTube, from different things, so that I could come back to you fresh and excited with lots of ideas for videos in the next upcoming months. So what we're talking about today is marketplaces besides eBay. And if you've ever wanted to like dip your toes into, like, you're good with eBay, if you're a newer reseller, you're good with eBay, or have just been on eBay for many years and you're kind of wanting to dip your toes into this idea of cross-listing, I thought I would just do a quick overview of some of the other marketplaces, that just to give you an idea of what they're about, and if there's something that you would want to explore into and going into, to see which of those platforms might be right for you. Okay, so if you're one of my viewers, you know that I have every week I share my what solds, and we sell on multiple platforms, and we generally have sales on most of those platforms every week. So we like to do that. We realize, like, if eBay is slow, some of the other platforms pick up, vice versa. So it's kind of like the new reselling way, is to kind of have your eggs spread in many baskets and reaching a larger audience, because there's some people refuse to shop on eBay. They only want to be on Mercari or Poshmark, vice versa. So we've just kind of embraced the whole cross-posting thing. Now, we do have software that we use for that. That's Vendoo. We're very happy with Vendoo. There's other ones that are maybe a little bit cheaper, but are a little more glitchy. And I'm not saying Vendoo is perfect. None of them are perfect. And you have to go into cross-listing software realizing that it's still a lot of work. It's not just a magic, like, it's going to do all the work for you. I see a lot of complaints on that, where people are like, oh, why didn't they fill in all this? Well, every marketplace is different and what they require is different. So the software can only do so much. They're always they're improving things. All of them are. But you still have to kind of monitor each listing that gets launched onto each platform. So just go into it with that idea. And you don't have to use software. If you were if I was only going to list, say, on eBay and Poshmark, I don't think I'd use software. I would just make my listing and then copy and paste it over into the other platform as well, and just kind of do it all at once at that time. So anyway, we do have a link for Vendoo down below, as usual. I do recommend it as one of the better cross-listing platform or software programs. Okay, so I'm just consulting my notes. I just want to make sure I cover everything today, talking about all these different platforms. I'm going to try to just stick to the facts about the platforms today and not editorialize too much. I do have opinions on different platforms, but everyone's experience with them is different. Some people just like knock it out of the park with Mercari, and it might not be my favorite platform, and we might not do so great with it. You guys kind of know my feelings about Etsy and Ruby Lane and like all that. But I'll just try to share what I know about the platform, and maybe just some things to keep in mind if you decide to use that platform. Okay, so if I have any links like to sign up for these platforms, I'll just put those down below. Sometimes, if you sign up to Poshmark through my link, you'll get some like $10 to spend, or I don't know, something like that. I know Whatnot is like that. And, it's more about being a buyer on there. I'm not necessarily going to be able to give you a link, although Etsy, I'll put my Etsy referral link down below. I think you can still, if they're still doing that, you can get some free listings if you open an Etsy shop. So, okay. So anyway, those links will all be down below. I'm not going to talk about them through each one. And we're going to start probably with Etsy, just because it's like been around probably the longest after eBay of the ones that we're talking about today. Okay, so let's switch over to the computer. Okay, so we're starting with Etsy. We're going to start off with the platforms that I have the experience with, and then at the end, we're going to talk about a few that I haven't even tried out yet, but just to give you some information about those. So Etsy, we do still have a couple Etsy shops. Like I've talked about in my Ruby Lane videos, a lot of my vintage goes onto Ruby Lane, but we still do make sales on Etsy. And as long as we're consistent with listing on there, then we end up having sales. I have a sewing pattern shop on Etsy that when I'm active in it, I sell sewing patterns there. So I have that. And then we also have another vintage one that if any of our vintage ends up on eBay, then we cross-post it to Etsy, to this other shop, and a lot of the mid-century stuff still does pretty well over there. But in any case, a lot of people are still doing like totally fine with Etsy, and a lot of people think Etsy is just for handmade items. So if we pop over to this other link, this is in their help center, so there's a lot of information. They have a seller handbook as you get started. I haven't opened an Etsy shop in a while, so I don't know where they're at as far as like what kind of verification they have for new sellers and everything like that. But here's Etsy Shop Basics. It's in their help center. And if you kind of look down about like what can I sell on Etsy is what it's talking about. So a lot of people think of Etsy and really they market a lot towards the handmade community. So it says everything listed on sale for sale on Etsy must be either made, designed, handpicked, or sourced by you. Okay, so that's just the basic overview. So we've got made by a seller is the handmade. You can design, you can sell designs, your digital uploads, things like that. Handpicked by a seller. Items that fall under handpicked include vintage items that are at least 20 years old, items from nature, and certain collections of items that a seller selected and curated for sale. I don't know what that means. And then the other one about sourced are things like craft supplies, party decorations, items personalized with a buyer's unique text or image. Okay, so that's kind of always been the thing with Etsy. People always thought it was just handmade, but you can always have sold vintage, and that's what I've sold. The sewing pattern shop is I sell a lot of vintage sewing patterns, but it's also newer sewing patterns fall under the craft supplies category, so they're perfectly fine to sell on Etsy. Now, as far as fees, Etsy still has a listing fee. Let me just go back over here. I don't know. Let's see if let me see. Back on the basics. So basically, it's a 20-cent listing fee for 4 months. The listing is good for 4 months. So every 4 months you can set it to automatically renew, or you can, and it can end and you can decide whether you want to relist it or not. So you're really thinking of it like 5 cents a month for a listing fee. There are transaction fees, 6.5%. So if something sells, it's 6.5%, but it also gets applied to the shipping, that fee. There's payment processing fees, which I think is just the generic, usually about 3%. Most places are about the same. And then there's ad fees. These are you wanna take note of. So they started this thing a few years back called offsite ads. So if you make less than $10,000 in a year, you can actually opt out of this. But it's 15% total if your item was sold because of an offsite ad. So like they put it out on Google or they put it wherever. If somebody clicked on it from there, came into your shop, bought it, it's 15% that they take for that. When you start an Etsy shop, they automatically opt you into that. So it comes as a surprise to a lot of new sellers. But if you're making less than $10,000 a year, you still have the ability to opt out of it. Now, if you make more than $10,000, you can't opt out, but the percentage drops to 12%. They do have, so that's just something to keep in mind if you open an Etsy shop. that you can, anyway, we are able to opt out on both of our shops. Kind of good to, you know, it's kind of been the benefit of having more than one shop, because one shop doesn't necessarily get very big. So we're still able to do that. Anyway, you can do offers on Etsy. I'm trying to think of anything else you might need to know about it. There's a lot of things that you need to kind of dig into if you're serious about selling on Etsy. As with most sites, just like I said before, staying active will give you the best results on getting sales on that site. Okay, so hold on one second. Okay, so as far as shipping, you can ship right through Etsy, or you can ship like with Pirate Ship. You can link Pirate Ship up to Etsy and do all your shipping through there. There are label fees, which the little breakdown doesn't go into too much detail about that. But anyway, okay, so Etsy is an option for going outside of eBay, especially if you're interested in vintage or supplies or things like that, or if you are into handmade. So let's pop over to Poshmark. Poshmark is probably our the biggest one that we cross list the most to, the biggest platform, and the one we get probably the most sales behind eBay. So a lot of people, again, think of Poshmark as just clothing, fashion, and that's definitely kind of a focus on there, but it's much more. If you look across the top here, we have women's clothes, men's, kids, home, all sorts of things for the home, electronics even, things for pets, beauty and wellness definitely has to be new. Okay, so that's that. You see, we've actually sold quite a few of non-clothing items on Poshmark. We've sold glassware, we've sold vintage, we've sold things for the home. One of the only things I think you can't sell, as we forget sometimes, is like as we're cross-posting, there isn't really a section for sporting goods. But I'm trying to think of anything else. So with Poshmark, you do have to have the app on your phone. Like you have to have an account with like signed in on the app. But you can list on desktop. We end up don't listing on either because we just cross post from Vendoo. So, but you can make the listing completely on your phone. Like it's super fast and super easy. Or you can do the same thing on your desktop if that's what you're comfortable with. It's a very simple website. There's so many things about Poshmark that we really like. The shipping is one thing. Basically, they provide the shipping label for you. You don't have to figure out weights or anything like that. They have a flat rate shipping label for each item. But you have to keep in mind that it only goes up to 5 pounds. So let me just click on this so you have something else to look at. It says how it works. Okay, Poshmark is a leading social marketplace for new and secondhand style. So here you can see some pictures. You list your items for sale with just a few clicks. There's Posh Parties. We don't have to talk about that. Posh Post. So when you make a sale on Poshmark, we provide you with a prepaid, pre-addressed label ready to be put on the box. Once your sale's been packaged, you can drop it off at a USPS mailbox or have it picked up for free. And what's the beauty of it is their shipping is priority mail. And so you can use the free priority mail packaging that the U.S. Post Office provides. So all the flat rate boxes and everything like that, you can just put your item in that and then throw the label on it and you're done, right? You don't have to figure out shipping ahead of time and all that kind of stuff. So Mr. Pish Posh doing the shipping loves Poshmark sales. He's like, you just throw it in a box that fits and it's all good. You just have to keep in mind the 5 pound limit and keep in mind that if you can purchase another, if you're up to 10 pounds, you can purchase another, you can upgrade your label. but you as the seller are going to pay the difference. So you want to keep that in mind. So sometimes boots and like kind of heavier things, you just have to keep that in mind, maybe not to put those on Posh. So their selling fee does turn some people off. It's 20%. It does seem pretty hefty, but they don't have any listing fees. They don't have any limits. You can just kind of start listing right away. You do get a lot from that 20% in the sense that they handle all the customer service problems. So they're the ones who make decisions about returns. They claim there's no returns for fit, so people can't like just try it on, and be like, no, I don't like it or whatever, and just return it. They're encouraged to just reposh the item themselves, just sell it themselves. And, you can make it so that you allow them to use your photos and they can just do it really simple. Now, if something's not as described, it still is decided by Poshmark whether it comes back to you or not. I had an issue recently and they let me keep my money and they refunded the buyer. So they just kind of took care of it. So it's kind of nice. Even though it's the 20%, they take care of all the shipping. The listing is super fast and easy. And I don't know. It just kind of, they take care of the customer service, right? So you do get a little bit for your 20%. And honestly, the way eBay is now with their fees and their promoting and all the stuff that you end up doing, I feel like the fees don't end up that far off anyway. Okay, so now the only other thing you want to know about Posh, which also might turn people off, is the fact that it's a social marketplace. So there's this whole thing about sharing, and it's a way for your items to get bumped in the site themselves. So you follow people, they follow you, you share your items. Like you can't just list them and forget them. You share them, and then you share them to your followers. And so some people are like, well, what if your followers don't really, they're not really like watching their feed, right? So it's not so much about that. It's the fact that if somebody does go to the search bar and look for an item, the most recently shared items are going to be closer to the top. Okay, so you kind of want to, on a regular basis, be sharing your items, just getting them kind of back to the top. So a lot of people are like, no, that's just too much work. And I agree. They have a bulk share option right in Poshmark, which you can start with, where you just have to make sure you pick all your listings, and then you can just set your phone down and it'll share for you, and you could just totally stick with that. Again, we pay for software that does this automatically. I use Posh Sidekick, something I just like, I don't even have to think about it anymore. So Posh Sidekick is on my phone and it's running all the time. And you can set it so that it doesn't overshare. And then it also sends out offers for me. So a big part of Poshmark and selling is the offers and the like negotiations that you do with the buyer. Okay. So sometimes you just get a sale straight away. Someone just buys your item straight out, but a lot of it is like they like your item, and so you send them an offer, or they send an offer right away, or things like that. So you do a little bit of negotiating. But that's just what we use. You could definitely just do the sharing right within the app. But Poshmark definitely, I would say, is our second biggest platform that we make sales on each week. But it takes a little bit of work, right? Reselling is not what, back when I started, reselling was all about listing it and forgetting it, and people find it eventually. But there's just more competition. There's more stuff out there for people to find. And so you kind of have to just constantly be working it. So anyway, I was also going to say at the beginning, I forgot to say that if you have any, I hopefully I'm not like giving too much of an opinion about each site. There's goods, there's pros and cons about each platform, for sure. There's pros and cons about eBay. There's stuff I don't like about eBay either, but you know, that's where I make the most of our money. But if there is anything that you have a question about a marketplace, feel free to leave a comment down below. Like, if you want more insight into my experience with a site, you know, just let me know. Or if there's a platform that I haven't covered in this video, then feel free to let me know, okay? Next up is Mercari. Now, Mercari, let me find it. They just recently, as you can see in the banner, made a change where they took away the selling fees. And they kind of transferred the fees to the buyer. Okay, now our sales have kind of gone down since that happened, but we haven't really played around with our listings to kind of compensate for that. So what a lot of people did is they lowered their prices because they know now the buyer is paying the fees that we would have paid before. So they've kind of lowered their prices, or they're more aggressive with making offers and things like that. So Mercari is a site where it's kind of like eBay. There's not really a whole lot of limits as what you can sell on there. You can do a little bit of everything. We've done some toys. We've done pretty well with like toys and Lego. We do have the account for Mercari because it's one of the only places you can do used health and beauty products. So like perfume, that's only, you know, 70% of it is still there. You used to be able to do that on eBay and you can't anymore, but the market seems pretty good. Like the buyers know to go to Mercari to get maybe the perfumes or the, you know, lotions or makeup or things like that that they know are discontinued and they can't find anymore. I know other sellers doing really good selling jewelry, you know, different things like that on there. And there's some sellers who are just like killing it on Mercari. They do super well, maybe because they give a lot of attention to it and really know how to work it. So we don't have a ton of sales on Mercari. We've done better in the past, just depending on how much time and effort we're putting into it. It's one of those, I should have said that, Poshmark and Mercari are both like this. You get paid once the item is delivered. Now, if the person receives the item and rates you, like gives you feedback right away, you get your money. Your money will get deposited into your account, then into your like Mercari or Poshmark account. If you want the money into your bank account, you have to schedule those transfers too. So that's what I should say. They took away the selling fees. There is still a transaction fee to move your money out of Mercari. So it's like $2 or something like that. So you don't want to be like moving your money every day. You want to move it when it's a, you know, kind of a chunk, and then the $2 won't, you know. So they're getting their money by holding onto your money with interest and things like that. So I had just remembered that as well. Or you can have a balance in Mercari and you can buy things in Mercari, and then, you know, there's no kind of fee involved in that, except for the buying fee. So they'll get you no matter what. Anyway, okay, so toys, Lego, used health and beauty. All right. You can use Mercari labels. They have their own shipping labels. You can use that system. They basically have it so that, you know, like 8 ounces cost this much, a pound costs this much. So you can choose the Mercari labels, or you can choose to ship on your own. And then you put in either free shipping, or you put in the buyer, you know, you put in a flat rate and then you use pirate ship to ship. So just up to you. But again, Mercari is another really simple site. It almost seems to be, to me, that it would be a good site like if you were starting out reselling and you just wanted to kind of get a feel for how to make a listing, or just the whole back and forth with a buyer. That Mercari is a super simple site to kind of start with. But anyway, so again, good and bad on all the sites. And let's see, who else do we need to talk about? We need to talk about Depop. Okay, so Depop can be, the focus is maybe on the, let's see, Gen Z, or I don't know, something like that. So it is kind of focused on maybe Y2K fashions, 90s, vintage. I was for a while only focused on putting my vintage, my kind of streetwear type looking things, sportswear type stuff, and kind of quirky, anything kind of quirky vintage is what I had focused putting on there. But I've come to realize like there's a lot more that I can list on there. So we've had sales for some hard goods. We've had some sales for a lot of accessories like my belts. Shoes have sold pretty well on here. But I've sold like Lululemon, like a men's Lululemon sold like super fast on Depop. So Gorpcore, I did a video on some of those aesthetics that are kind of popular on a lot of the platforms right now. And Gorpcore is like Patagonia, Arc'teryx, like hiking. Think of Pacific Northwest hiking brands and things like that. So some of that type of stuff has sold really quickly. Just a basic men's like vintage sweater vest sold on Depop fairly quickly. So we do sell a lot of hats on there. You guys know we list a lot of hats because we have a source right now where we can get them pretty cheaply. So as you can see, we put a little bit of everything on there. Now, if I go all the way to the bottom, ooh, did I make it to the bottom? No. I'm waiting for my computer to load. All my solds are at the bottom of Depop. But it takes a while to get down there. Because we actually have quite a bit listed at the moment. Okay, so what else do I want to say? So it does kind of appeal to a younger crowd. And Depop recently made the change that Mercari made. So they just very, very recently removed the selling fees and passed them on to the buyer again. That was as of July 15th. So Depop seems to be making quite a few little changes or bigger changes right now. So this information is good for August 2024. If you're watching this video later, you might want to research a little bit more as to like what's going on with Depop at the moment. Okay, so you still pay for a payment processing fee, but this selling fee, the transaction fee, has been taken away. There's no listing fee. Okay, so here we go with our solds. So yeah, you see a lot of shoes and hats and accessories, things like that. A tie clip, some glassware, that chunky Y2K look can be really popular on here, and things can move faster. That style can move faster on here than on other sites. Okay, but there's been items that have surprised us, like I said. Depop, if you didn't know, is actually owned by Etsy. They bought it a few years ago. Same thing, you can use Depop labels or you can use your own, although I heard some people experiencing that they can't use their own anymore, so it could be that they're taking that away. Depop labels, Mercari labels, they usually have shipping protections built in. If you use your own labels, you're not necessarily you're going to end up waiving that shipping protection that you get. Okay, so Depop labels are not flat rate like Poshmark with just one flat rate. They are adjusted according to the size and weight, but they do go up to a 10-pound label. They have a 10-pound label that you can use, so it's good for bulky boots and things like that. But a lot of people feel that the heavier Depop labels are too expensive, and so they were doing a combination of Depop labels for the smaller stuff and then their own labels for the bigger stuff. So that's just something to keep in mind. Did I say Depop only has 8 photos? They only had 4 for a long time each listing, but they bumped it to 8 photos, which is a little bit better. And yeah, so any questions about Depop? we have been kind of giving it a little bit more attention lately and have been selling a little bit more as well, getting a lot more offers. Oh, that's something to keep in mind. So Depop, you kind of have to go into Depop. I see a lot of people complaining about this, but I'm like, this is what this marketplace is like. So that's what you accept when you start to sell on it. So Depop offers are common, but they are not binding. Okay, so a person can make an offer on Depop. It's just the younger crowd. They're just kind of used to doing this, right? They make an offer. They might make an offer on 5 different items and then think about it. You know, they see what answers come back and then they kind of think about it for a while, or maybe they don't buy anything. So they're just kind of kicking tires, whatever. And so you just don't take it personal. When I get an offer on Depop and I accept it, then I just go about my day. Like, they either buy it or they don't, right? So I have found that if I message the person right after the offer, sometimes that does, like, there's a higher percentage of those resulting in a sale. Like I just say something like, oh, hey, I accepted your offer, just to let you know I can ship this item out tomorrow, you know, if you end up being interested in it. And sometimes that works. But I've also had plenty of people just make an offer, I accept it, and then they pay within a few minutes. And then there's a large percentage that just disappear and you never hear from them again. So it's just is what it is. Like, it's not a big deal to me. eBay has been playing around with offers like that too, where you can accept the offer, but it's still available to other people to buy. So, you know, they're all kind of playing around with stuff like that. Just go into it knowing that's what it is. Okay, let's move on to Whatnot. You may have heard of Whatnot as far as it being a place where you can sell items in live shows. So, okay, not my favorite thing, but it's doable. You guys might not have known because I didn't really record anything about it, but I actually did a Whatnot show. So I went through the whole process, and you have to apply to sell on Whatnot. You share your social media accounts, you share your store, like whether your store on other platforms have a following, things like that. I think, you know, the more of that I think other people are getting approved, like no problem. Having the YouTube channel did help. Not that I have a huge following. But I got approved, and then you attend an onboarding session. It's basically a Zoom call, and they give you like a how-to on how to sell and everything like that. Then you do your show. You sell stuff, people claim it right in the show, and then Whatnot handles the shipping label. You know, they charge the person. They do the whole transaction part of it. And then, anyway, okay, so then I think I forgot something to talk about. Oh yeah, no, we're good. Okay, then, hold on one second. Sorry about that. Yep, okay, we're good. So then you ship it, and then after it gets received, you receive your money. Now, the percentage that they take on Whatnot is 8% on the sale, and then a 3% processing fee, so about 11% total. Now, Whatnot is getting a growing audience. It's expanding quite a bit. And the other thing that people might not realize is that you can also have you can see here, these are live shows that are like happening right now. You can see who's like, how many people are attending and things like that. It's mostly like, there's a lot of jewelry ones because I followed a few jewelry accounts, but they started out with a lot of like collectible, you know, Funko Pops, like things like that, collectibles, but it's expanded. So you can have like an estate sale and storage unit where you're selling a little bit of everything, you know, things like that. So your shows can be, you know, a variety of things. So I did a show with sewing patterns, And it wasn't too bad. Like, I did the sewing pattern show. I probably made like $50 or something like that. But I was just selling off, patterns. I'm overwhelmed with patterns, so I might do it again. And obviously, the more shows you do, the more you'll get a following and more people will show up to your show, and then your sales will do better and better. So it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of work to get involved in it. I just didn't have that at the time, so I haven't done another show since. But you can also they also have a marketplace. So you don't have to just shop within a live show, and you don't have to list only in a live show. So you can, I've only done this through Vendoo, but you can basically put any of your merchandise over in like the marketplace and just kind of see if anybody finds it and make sales that way without it being a live show. So they do have a marketplace. They do have live shows. Their audience is growing, like I said. So it might be one to keep an eye on and see what happens with that. Okay. All right. So that's Whatnot. If you have any more questions, go ahead and leave me a comment down below. Let me see. Is that the marketplace? That might be the sales that I've had. So, okay. Next up is a site called Grailed. And now these are ones that I haven't really had any experience with. I've thought about doing Grailed. It started out as menswear only. But they've expanded, as you can see, to women's wear. Sneakers are a big focus. So if you look at the styles right here that are kind of focused on, we have luxury, vintage, avant-garde, gorpcore, Y2K, streetwear. So to me, that kind of sums up Grailed. And I, let's see, there's no listing fee in it. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I think of it as kind of like a high-end Depop is kind of how I focus on it. Designer streetwear, vintage. I think if I were to list anything on here, I would focus on interesting vintage. I don't come across a whole lot of luxury or designer or anything like that. But it's kind of like a fancy little site, right? If you kind of see some of the stuff that's on here. There's menswear, women's wear. Here's some brands, popular designers, staff picks, things like that if you want to take a look at it. The selling fee for Grailed is 9% plus the payment processing fee of like 3.5% or so. No listing fee. Feedback I've gotten is that it was kind of hard to make sales, but then some people, what they do, because they're using software, they're just kind of like, you know what, if it applies to Grailed, they'll just cross post and get a sale here and there. They do say they get some good prices for their items on Grailed, like higher than they would get like on Depop or somewhere like that. They do have a thing where you can, I think, make offers or accept offers, and offers are binding. So unlike Depop, where the offer may or may not result in a sale, it's more like Poshmark, where offers will if you accept them, they automatically get paid. So that's nice. So it's just something I've thought about playing around with just to see, but I don't know if it's worth the time for me. But anyway, I wanted you guys to know about it out there. We'll try to, I don't know, was that editorializing? I feel like I gave my opinion through this whole video. Anyway, it's hard not to. You guys have to just decide for yourself. This might totally, like, for some of you, you might look at Grailed and be like, oh my goodness, I love that. I'm going to try that. And, you know, you could totally do awesome on it. Anyway, then another one that is one that I've heard of that people use, supported by Vendoo and some of the other cross-listing softwares, is Kidizen. And this is for mostly kids, secondhand clothing, if that's something that you are into selling. But they also do have, so they have baby, they have girl, boy, and then they have for mama. So I've seen like people say like Hannah Anderson or Zara or Lily Pulitzer, things like that do pretty well over on Kitizen. So again, the sellers I know who've used it, they're just kind of like, yeah, I just throw whatever applies over on Kitizen and I get a sale once in a while and it surprises me. And it's just one more place, you know, that you could possibly get eyes on your item. So that one, Kitizen, I have not played around with it at all. You know, maybe I'll think about it. We'll see. It says that what makes Kitizen different, something I read, was that the money is available immediately after you ship, so you don't have to wait for your item to get approved or things like that by the buyer. And the fees are 12% plus 50 cents. So again, you can use their shipping labels on Kitizen, or you can use your own, you know, probably set your own price or things like that. So I don't really know much more about Kitizen other than that. Then the last one, I'm not really going to go into deeply because I have made separate videos and I'm going to link those videos here at the end of our video. But Ruby Lane is a vintage marketplace, vintage and antiques. They've recently changed their pricing, and